The story of George Stinney Jr. is a tragic and controversial one that took place in the United States during the 1940s. George was born on October 21, 1929, in Elkolu, South Carolina, to a poor African-American family. On March 23, 1944, an incident occurred that would forever change George's life. Two young white girls, 11-year-old Betty June Binnicker and 7-year-old Mary Emma Thames, went missing while out riding their bicycles. A search party was organized, and their bodies were found the next day in a ditch. They had been brutally beaten and murdered. Amid the fear and racial tensions of the time, George, who was just 14 years old at the time, became the primary suspect in the case. He was arrested by the police and was subjected to intense interrogation without the presence of his parents or legal counsel. The authorities claimed that George confessed to the crime, but no written record of this alleged confession exists. The trial of George Stinney Jr. was swift and deeply flawed. The proceedings lasted only a few hours, and the defense presented little evidence or witnesses on George's behalf. No physical evidence was found linking George to the crime scene. The main testimony against him came from the sheriff and other police officers who claimed George had confessed. George's court-appointed lawyer did not call any witnesses, including his family members who could have provided an alibi. The jury, comprised of all white males, deliberated for only 10 minutes before finding George guilty of the charges. Despite his young age and the lack of evidence, George was sentenced to death by electrocution. On June 16, 1944, just 81 days after the girls' murders, George Stinney Jr. was executed, becoming the youngest person to be executed in the United States in the 20th century. The controversial case gained renewed attention decades later, as questions were raised about George's guilt and the lack of due process he received. Efforts to seek justice for George Stinney Jr. and have his conviction overturned gained momentum in the 21st century. In 2014, his case was reopened, and new evidence was presented to a South Carolina judge. The evidence included sworn affidavits from George's family members, highlighting the inconsistencies and violations during the original trial. In December 2014, Judge Carmen Mullen ruled that George Stinney Jr.'s conviction was fundamentally flawed and violated his constitutional rights. She vacated the conviction, stating that George did not receive a fair trial and that his confession was likely coerced. The judge acknowledged the profound injustice that occurred in George's case. The story of George Stinney Jr. stands as a tragic example of the racial prejudices and flaws within the criminal justice system. His case has sparked discussions about the importance of fair trials, due process, and the need to confront the legacy of racial injustice in the United States. It serves as a reminder of the ongoing work needed to ensure justice and equality for all individuals, regardless of their race or age.